From the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, football's seen it all. And behind every goal, every tackle, every celebration lies a story. Some are filled with glory, and others with despair. But we're about to unlock the football vault of football's tears and triumphs that'll make you laugh, cry, and honestly, guys, everything in between. We're kicking things off with a comeback that'll make your jaw drop. Are you ready for it? Well, don't miss anything. Can you imagine yourself supporting Liverpool versus AC Milan in the 2005 Champions League final? With a scary 3-0 deficit at halftime, yes, really, the Reds were out of it. But football, as they say, is a game of two halves. And what a second half it was! In just 6 minutes, Liverpool pulled off the impossible. 3 goals, 3 roars from the Liverpool fans that shook the stadium to its core. The Reds were back in the game, and they were there to win. Extra time didn't settle anything, so it was penalty kicks to decide the fate of the match. Every kick was a heart-stopping moment. When Liverpool finally lifted the trophy, the world witnessed pure, unadulterated joy. This miracle of Istanbul is now legendary in football history. And speaking of controversial moments, let's time travel back to 1986, where one player's divine intervention stirred up a storm. You ready for that? Can you handle it? Let's get into it. The 1986 World Cup gave us one of the most controversial moments ever. Argentina versus England, quarterfinals. Maradona goes up for a header against the keeper, but instead of using his head, he punches the ball into the net with his hand. The ref didn't see it and the goal stood. Maradona later called it the Hand of God. Yeah, I mean, that name is pretty fitting, right? Hand of God. England was furious. They were really angry. But that's not all. Minutes later, Maradona scored the goal of the century, dribbling past half the England team. Were they asleep or something, or was Maradona just that good? From individual brilliance to team triumph, let's jet over to Atlanta in 1996, where an underdog story was about to unfold. Now let's talk about Nigeria shocking the world in '96. Even though they weren't the favorites, they gave it their all. Nigeria was down twice against Argentina in the final, but they fought their way back up. Emmanuel Amunike scored the game-winning goal with just a few minutes remaining. It was the first time an African football team had won an Olympic gold medal. This triumph was significant for all of Africa and wasn't the only for the sport. Now, not all football legends are known for single moments. Some, like our next hero, built their legacy over decades. Gianluigi Buffon isn't just a goalkeeper, he's a legend. This guy played top-level football for 28 years. 28 years! Think about that. He began playing with Parma in 1995 and stayed there until 2023. That's more time than some of you have even been alive. Buffon achieved near-perfect success in winning the World Cup and several Serie A titles. He was well known for his outstanding leadership and saves throughout his career. He remained a world-class athlete well into his 40s. And no, he wasn't walking out there with a cane. The guy was still as limber as ever. He was honestly amazing. From long-lasting careers to season-long perfection, let's rewind to 1999, when one team decided winning everything was on the menu. 1999 was Manchester United's year, no doubt. They didn't just win, they won everything. Everything. Premier League? Check. FA Cup? Check again. But the Champions League final? That was something else. United was losing to Bayern Munich as the game was ending. Then, boom! Teddy Sheringham scores in the 91st minute. 2 minutes later, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer nets another. United wins 2-1. It was unreal. It was unreal. I mean, if you remember that game, you know just how crazy it was. But let's be real. For every triumph, there's heartbreak. And very few moments crush the soul quite like this next one. Was that crying convincing? Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about it. The 1994 World Cup final was heartbreaking for Italy, especially for Roberto Baggio. The match against Brazil ended in penalties. Italy's best player, Baggio, needed to score to keep his country's chances alive. He walked up, and the tension was palpable. You could hear a pin drop. Unfortunately, Baggio's attempt soared beyond the bar. Brazil prevailed, shattering Italy's hopes. Head down, Baggio's picture will always be imprinted in football history. Sometimes, though, the pain of defeat pales in comparison to real-life tragedy. And despite its importance, our next story reminds us that football is just a game. The 1994 World Cup campaign for Colombia was an absolute misery. I would rather be standing in pouring rain while a dog bites my ankles than watch this game again. It was absolutely terrible. But not only that, the outcome was honestly really tragic. So let's talk about it. Colombia was eliminated after Andrés Escobar unintentionally scored an own goal against the USA. Although it was a pretty straightforward error, we all make mistakes, right? Usually they aren't that bad, but anyway, what transpired next was absolutely unbelievable. Okay, listen up, this is pretty sad. A few days after arriving back home, Escobar was killed. It's believed that his own goal was the reason. Which, I mean, come on, we all make mistakes, that's pretty petty, right? But speaking of tragedies that shook the football world, let's go back to a dark day in 1958. February 6, 1958 is a dark day in football history. Manchester United's plane crashed on takeoff in Munich. 8 players died, along with staff and journalists. The Busby Babes, a talented young team, was gone. This disaster changed United forever. But from this tragedy came an inspiring story of resilience. Manager Matt Busby, who nearly died himself, rebuilt the team. And 10 years later, United won the European Cup. Fast forward to more recent times, and even the greatest players aren't immune to emotional farewells. Because we've got to talk about Messi and Barcelona. This is probably going to make a lot of you cry, so get your tissues ready. Messi leaving Barcelona in 2021 was something we honestly never thought we'd see. He'd been there since he was a kid, but contract stipulations meant Barca couldn't keep him. At his farewell press conference, Messi broke down in tears. It was absolutely heartbreaking. This guy, who rarely shows emotion on the field, couldn't hold it together. Lots of fans were in tears, and honestly, I kind of am feeling it right now too. Anyway, let me gather myself here. It felt like the end of an era, right? Messi's tearful goodbye showed how much the club meant to him. And honestly, that's something I don't think I'm ever gonna forget. It's pretty hard to. Anyway, let's move on to even more shocking exits, because our next moment proves that even the coolest heads can lose it in the heat of the moment. It was the 2006 World Cup final, France versus Italy. And it's Zidane's last game ever. He's been brilliant all of the tournament. But then, out of nowhere, he headbutts Italy's Materazzi in the chest. And if you've seen this, it kinda sticks with you forever. It was absolutely brutal. That, of course, was a red card. Zidane walks off, passing the World Cup trophy. France loses on penalties. It was a shocking exchange. Zidane, who was usually so cool, lost it in his final moments. Later, we found out Materazzi had insulted Zidane's sister. It was a sad end to a great career. Because I think all of us are probably gonna forever remember that headbutt. Hey, maybe Materazzi had it coming, I don't know, but anyway. Our next story is a sobering reminder of life's fragility, so buckle up. In February 2023, a massive earthquake hit Turkey and Syria. Among the victims was Christian Atsu, a Ghanaian footballer. He just scored the winning goal for his Turkish team the day before. Search teams looked for days, hoping to find him alive. But sadly, it wasn't to be. Atsu's death hit hard because he was known for his charity work, especially helping prisoners in Ghana. It was a stark reminder that footballers aren't invincible. And his loss wasn't just felt in football, but it was also felt in communities that he helped. It was felt around the world. But let's shift gears and celebrate a life that changed football forever. As a player, Johan Cruyff invented moves like the Cruyff turn. He led the Dutch total football style that changed the game. Then, as a manager, he made Barcelona into a powerhouse. His ideas about how football should be played still influence teams today. Cruyff believed in attacking, entertaining football. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to win beautifully. His impact on football is huge. And even if you've never heard his name, you've seen his influence in modern football. From revolutionary ideas to revolutionary seasons, let's relive a year when one team rewrote the history books. Arsenal accomplished an amazing feat in 2003-2004. They won every game they played in the Premier League. 12 ties, 26 victories, and 0 defeats. 0! They were unbeatable under the leadership of men like Patrick Vieira and Thierry Henry, and terrified their opponents. They weren't simply putting up results, they also played some awesome football. This team became known as the Invincibles. In the Premier League era, no other side has accomplished this. This record may actually last a lifetime. Arsenal fans still talk about this season like it was yesterday. And honestly, they wish that Arsenal was still this good. Ooh, shots fired. Anyway, let's move on. Now, remember Zidane's headbutt? Well, that's not the only time he used his head to make World Cup history. In the final against Brazil, Zidane turned into a goal-scoring machine. He scored not one, but 2 headers in the first half. For a guy not known for his heading, this was huge. The French crowd went wild. You could feel the excitement through the TV. France went on to win 3-0, claiming their first ever World Cup. Zidane became a national hero overnight. This victory united the country like never before. And listen up, because we're about to end with a comeback that gives the miracle of Istanbul a run for its money. Barcelona pulled off the impossible in 2017. They were down 4-0 after the first leg against PSG. Everyone thought it was over, but Barca had other plans. They needed to win by 5 goals. 5 goals. Yeah, that's crazy, right? Everyone thought, yeah, there's no way they're going to be able to do that. Well, guess what? They did. The game was intense. Neymar was on fire, scoring 2 late goals. Then, in the last minute, Sergio Roberto scored the winner. The stadium went bonkers. It ended 6-1, with Barca winning 6-5 on aggregate. This comeback was so epic, they named it the Remontada, the comeback. Simply unbelievable. These moments remind us why we love the beautiful game of football. It's more than just a sport. It's human drama at its finest. Share your unforgettable football moment below, and don't forget to subscribe.